If you're a rail tuber covering the Elizabeth line right now, it is mandatory that you must insist that the Elizabeth line is not part of the London Underground. That's silly, and here's why. I think there are two big arguments against the Elizabeth line being an underground line. The Elizabeth line is S-Barney, unlike the Underground, and the Elizabeth line is of a completely different technical specification. Let's address these. On the first argument, it is broadly true that the Underground's number one role today is to provide short-distance urban transit across London. But I think it's important to remember that the Underground can be a lot more flexible than that. I would honestly argue that the Elizabeth line is truer to the original intentions of the Underground than what it has evolved into. The Underground's original purpose was to enable long-distance commuter trains to travel deeper into the city, and we still have some remnants of that purpose today. The obvious one is the Metropolitan line. This line goes very far outside London, has express services to shorten travel times for long-distance commuters, and its rolling stock is unique right now in that they feature transverse seating for extra comfort on those long-distance journeys, just like the Elizabeth line. The distance from Chesham to central London is about the same as from central London to Shenfield, so distance isn't a factor, and in years past things went even further afield. The idea that the Elizabeth line fills a niche that the Underground never has just isn't true. And that includes if you go beyond the commuter rail label and more towards an S-Bahn one, where trains use a central city tunnel or passage to connect suburban destinations. The District and Central lines are both a bit S-Barney, running overground on the edges before going underneath the city centre. The Bakerloo line extension would essentially turn that line into a mini crossrail from the commuter section to the West Coast Main Line, through London and into the South London suburbs. The Elizabeth line is perfectly complementary to these routes, so why not drop the division and accept that? The Elizabeth line, of course, is very blatantly different from the Underground in terms of its technical specs, which is the second big argument against fusing the two. But I don't feel this is a very relevant point to focus on. After all, the London Underground is split between subsurface and deep level lines, and nobody's claiming that means one or the other isn't a true Underground line. And keep in mind that these technical specifications have never been static. They used to run these lines with steam trains, some of which were designed to enable long distance running outside the area that we consider the Underground even then. These lines have been electrified, re-signalled, earned new rolling stock with features never even imagined in the first place. The Class 345 is just the logical next evolution of Underground's rolling stock, isn't it? If the District and Bakerloo and Metropolitan lines can share sections of mainline traffic, then why do we judge the Elizabeth line's ability to do so to be something unique? Ultimately, this debate is a bit about semantics, but I think there is a wider point to consider. I think treating the Elizabeth line as a new Underground line is a lot better for the casual, non-rail enthusiast crowd who will make up the vast majority of users of this line. I'll give an example from my personal experience on my first trip. I went to London to attend MCN Comic Con, and the Elizabeth line makes doing so extremely convenient. On my return journey, I took the Elizabeth line from Custom House to Farringdon, and I'm greeted with this view. To the left is a straight path to the Thameslink westbound platform. That's one stop straight to King's Cross and my train home. That's great, but I think to a casual observer it's not really obvious you can do that. The signs just point to vague national rail platforms, which to most people don't make them think of a massive S-Bahn style commuter network that can shuttle you straight through central London, including to 3 major rail termini. Imagine if instead we had a Thames line with branding and communication that properly integrated it into the Underground. I think that would remove a lot of the confusion, and lies mostly what the Elizabeth line is doing right now. Even if you firmly believe that there is no logical or practical reason why the Elizabeth line should be treated as part of the Underground, I think if pretending it is one gets tourists and day trippers on the line, then that's a worthwhile trade-off to make. With all that said, I don't think it's completely necessary to force everything to be under one integrated brand identity if you're just clever about it. I think Paris does a good job of separating its many different transit modes while keeping everything cohesive. London takes a slightly different approach, where the DLR and trams and overground are treated as their own separate networks, but steal from the underground's iconography and identity as a way of making it very clear that this is a London rapid transit line, and I think that's also a valid approach. But as of right now, the Elizabeth line stands alone as its own little thing. There is a world where it's the RERB to Thameslink RERA, and I think should Thameslink ever go that route, that kind of rebrand is what they should pursue. But in the meantime, don't be afraid to introduce the Elizabeth line as this cool new London Underground adjacent thing your friends should check out. If it helps build awareness, ridership and support for the system, that's a great thing. Please tell me what you think about this in the comments. If there's anything I've missed, thank you for watching.